Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
I know we've been going back and forth, and it's been a while to get you on here, but we're so utterly grateful to have you here with us, because we've been observing and watching, and I think it's quite inspiring to see what you've achieved since you set foot on Australian soil. So I've known Ross Ashman for over 15 years now, and I've had the pleasure to work alongside him, and probably one of the most sensational sales leaders I've worked with. I've been very inspired personally, and he's been a very silent mentor and reference on a number of occasions for me. So Ross, I'm really grateful that you could share some great perspective with our following on sales, which I know is extremely passionate to you. Ross is also the founding director and CEO for Public Sector Network, and Public Sector Network is a global conference organization. They're one of the leading organizations that run some amazing conferences, predominantly in the public sector domain. And that's pretty much Ross's speciality. And he's also a social entrepreneur. He does everything. Ross wears a number of hats. He's also been a sales leader and trainer for Pulse Coaching, where we worked alongside each other. So yeah, we've crossed paths on a number of
times.
I know. So thank you, Ross. Thank you for being with us this afternoon.
That's okay. Thank you for having me. And that was quite an intro. I've got lots to live up to now.
What about, your background, your history, what's kept you in sales, and what drives you as a sales leader?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So I think, like a lot of people, I actually got into sales by accident. It wasn't by design. I was off planning to be a lawyer and training, and decided at the last minute that despite qualifying, that I wanted to do something different. And I thought, well, how can I put these skills to good use? And the things that I really enjoyed about law was the research side of things, so building a case. And then obviously, as you know, Raina, the arguing part. So I don't mind.
And you're great at that.
I don't mind having a direct conversation with people and challenging. So those two things really appealed to me, and it kind of just naturally led me into sales. And I got into a very, very junior sales role in London, and sort of quickly moved through the ranks there. Then had a couple of sort of different career moves into some great companies and great positions before obviously coming back over to Australia. To Australia.
That's home now.
Back to the company where I started, was what I was trying to say. Back to the company where I started, who brought me over to Australia, and then led that team for 5-6 years before deciding to start out on my own. So I've been in sales my entire career, and obviously love it. And sort of took, I think, what I learned from sales into broader business leadership and people leadership, because I think there's a lot of synergies there that you take out of being a good salesperson, a good sales leader, into becoming a good company owner and hopefully a good person.
What's kept you in sales?
Well, I think two of the things I just mentioned, to be honest with you. I think number one is the people. Yeah, I mean, I love selling full stop, but I think the staff, the people, again, I think it's a great environment to be around. And also the customers. Again, I think if you can truly help a customer overcome a challenge or a problem, and help them achieve something, that's very, very fulfilling, right? So you've got, the people side, the staff, the customers. But also, look, by nature, most people will tell you I'm fairly competitive, and so for me, I also see closing business as having a win. That's what keeps you motivated. The sales leaderboard is a scoreboard. You can see how well you're doing. Start of every month, every quarter, it gets reset. For me, you can't ever rest on your laurels, and that's something that I find, again, very, very sort of motivating.
There's been such a massive shift, right? Just in business in general. So it'd be great to get your commercial perspective. Like, what's been the biggest shift in the last 6 months?
Yeah, well, I mean, the obvious thing has been the shift to online, certainly not just in the event space, but generally you've seen it with all types of industries, whether it's, even restaurants are a great example. So I think that's an obvious one. Everyone's had to really up their their digital game and understand how they can work with customers in an online medium. But I think other things have changed quite dramatically over the last 6 months as well. I mean, you know, consumer buying behavior and patterns and expectations were already changing, you know, and I think what COVID's done is it's just accelerated that. You're seeing a market that is very competitive. You're seeing buyers that are perhaps not as brand loyal as they once were, because they're able to quite easily buy and shift and move and change suppliers. And, you know, so I think all of those things means that as a salesperson or as a seller, you've absolutely got to be on top of your game and really add in value. I saw a report by Gartner not so long ago that surveyed the buy side. And you know, they said 44% said they are looking forward, or they would prefer, a sales-less environment. So in an ideal world, a buyer, 44% of them would prefer not to engage with a salesperson. I think that's a very scary number, and probably a damning sort of indictment as to how some salespeople operate. You know, most customers nowadays will only give you time if you are genuinely adding value. And I think that's the big thing, is you've got to make sure that you're doing that. If you're just there to take orders, just there to be pushy, just there to tell them the same stuff they could read on a website or a marketing email, I don't really understand what you're doing in that role. You know, you need to be able to problem solve, be able to think, be able to challenge the customer, and really help them unpick what it is they're sort of trying to achieve.
It's the education piece, right? So I think if you're going to be successful in this market, you've got
and that's just on the buy sell dynamic. I mean, obviously, then the other big piece, of course, is, you know, work from home. You know, how do you, certainly within sales teams traditionally have been quite tribal. You know what I mean? You get your sales team together. You have a huddle. You can sort of look at your salespeople and you can gauge where they are that day. Are they up?
And they love that people interaction. So I mean, this is a question for you, Ross, because you've come from that environment where being in an office so important, right?
Yeah. I think we were lucky in the sense that when we set the business up 7 years ago, we deliberately went to a hybrid model immediately, right? So we decided that for us to attract the best people, and for us to show that we trusted our people, and for us to have a competitive advantage around hiring, we went to a flexible work structure straight away. We didn't expect to see people 5 days a week. Our mantra was, you know, be in office when you need to be in office. You know, if you've got meetings, collaborative things that need to happen, then come in. But if you're working on tasks, admin, you need to focus, stay at home. You know, we don't need to monitor you to see what you're doing. So all of our sales team have grown up with that over the last 7 years. Anyway. So the shift, the autonomy, it wasn't such a big hard shift for us. But nonetheless, still just not having the engagement is hard, you know, because there's other things to think about. It's, you know, how do you train, how do you upskill people when you don't get to see them all the time? How do you, more importantly, how do you make sure that their mental health, their physical health is good? Because again, in an office, you can see when somebody's up.
Take them for a coffee and have that person.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's a lot harder to do. So I think you've got to lead now with a lot more intuition and a lot more empathy than you would have had to before. You've really got to be in tune with what's happening and try and pick up on perhaps some more subtle signals than you might have done before. But the other thing is, as well, is you can't get away with bad management, you know, and so you need to inspect what you expect. If you want certain things to be happening,
I love that.
You need to keep an eye on things, because again, if you take your hand off the wheel, unfortunately in the current market, it's very quick. Things can go wrong very quickly.
No, I agree. No, that was some golden nuggets there, Ross. I mean, I think that's, I think as sales leaders and just sales in general, we read a lot, right? And you're constantly on top of what's the right thing to do. But just, I think every time you listen to it, you pick up something new. So I think just the whole inspect what you expect, because I find that being, that even sales leaders need to be, from an intuition perspective, they need to be doing more now to keep engaged.
It's human nature. It's very easy to get complacent, you know.
Very.
And unfortunately, once you are complacent, it's hard to not be complacent anymore. You know, my old sales mentor many years ago told me that good times breed bad habits. And so, you know, there's a lot of people that was getting away with bad salesmanship or bad management when the times were good. Now the times are bad, you can't get away with that. You're going to have to really
you can't.
sort of change your game and make sure that you're sort of all across it.